Okay, are we good now? Are we good now? Do you hear me now? Okay, there we go. Well, no wonder no one was watching. So, let's get back to what I have been doing. Welcome to the Andrews and Eastern. Yes, I went to Denmark. It was fun. Alright, so we're going to do a combination of switching and some prep work here while I get trains ready. And why are you there? You don't go there. Sometimes trains do weird things. Anyway, so as I was saying, I just came back from a 11-day trip to Denmark. And you might think 11 days is enough time to see a country that small, but it really isn't. There's a lot of stuff that I wish I could have seen still. And I did the math. I went to about 28 different places while I was in Denmark. That's a lot of country to see. Now, of those 28, only about 6 or 7 were actually directly related to trains. But they took up about half the time. Priorities, you know? The first place I went to was a tram and bus museum. The, what was it? Sporvejsmuseet Skjoldenhuisen Nasel? Something like that. A little hard to pronounce. We'll just call it the Sporvejsmuseet. Combined tram and bus museum near the town of Gistrup. What's really nice is that on select days, including the day I was there, they run a bus. They'll take one of their historic buses and run it to the nearest train station. And that way you can take a train to the station and then go to the museum. And let me tell you, that is really nice because one of my goals for this trip was avoid renting a car if I didn't have to. Now, it is possible that because I'd previously asked if they'd be running a bus on that day, that they ran a bus on that day because they knew I'd ride it and I'd come to the museum. Which would be really nice if that's the case. And it would say a lot about them. I did not say anything about doing YouTube, so it would totally just be because I wanted a regular visitor. Now, the museum has a mix of trams and buses, as I stated. They've got a couple of little running lines. One is it's only about 100 meters long. It goes from the parking lot to the main museum. It's meter gauge. The other runs, I want to say a couple kilometers into the woods where they've got a turnaround loop and a little picnic area and a tram selling snacks and goodies. And that one is standard gauge. They run trams about every, 10 minutes or so. And they've got a pretty good fleet. And of course there's display halls where they talk all about the history of some of their trams and buses. And just tramways in Denmark in general. One thing that I was not quite prepared for and really should have been. As one might expect in Denmark, all the displays were in Danish. You know who doesn't have very good Danish? This guy. That is correct. Mitt danske er ikke så godt. Solution. Google Translate. If you download the Google Translate app, you can literally just point your phone camera at something and it'll pull up a translation for you. It is super convenient. So I quickly downloaded the Danish language, and I was able to read everything just fine after that. And that was a pretty good That was a pretty good museum. I'd recommend that. I took plenty of videos, so at some point there will be a video about the tram museum. The next day I went to the only railway that was running steam while I was there. And that was a place called the Hedelands Veteranbane. And as far as I can tell, Veteranbane is a Danish term meaning tourist railway, heritage railway, veteran railway, I guess you would say. The Hedelands Railway is a 700mm gauge railway. Runs from Hedehusen, which is near Roskilde, which is outside of Copenhagen, about 5 miles south through the Hedelands Park. It's an old quarry that's been completely grassed over, and it's got forests growing now. I want to say Hedeland would translate to Heathland, which I think is actually what a lot of Denmark was for quite some time. Fun ride, as of course had a blast, talked to the people there. They were more than happy to show me around, show me the back shops, show me some of the engines they've got. They run both a steam train and a diesel train, and they'll run them at the same time, alternating about every 45 minutes. And once again, this is a place you don't have to drive to. The tram museum normally you do, but the Hedelands Railway is like a 5 maybe 10-minute walk from the nearest major train station at Hedehusen. Now, you have to catch the right train, but they come about every 15 to 30 minutes in Denmark. They have really frequent service all throughout the day. It is honestly incredible. Anyway, after I was done at the Hedelands Railway, or after I'd ridden their train, I rented a bike. There's a place called MTB Bikes, and they literally brought the bike to the train station for me. And then I hopped on the bike, and I went all over the trails, following the train, trying to get videos and pictures. Oh man, am I out of shape, but it was a good workout, and I did manage to get some really good footage. I think you're going to enjoy it once I get it compiled and thrown up on YouTube. Also went and found a couple of trolls that hang out in the park. Glade Anders is pretty easy to find, but Moonamore, the mother of the trolls, she's a little bit harder. You really have to work to find her. But it's worth it. Yeah, we're not going to grab that. Next train. We'll get you pulled out. Anyway, after the Hedelands Railway, did a couple days worth of stuff that wasn't really train related, other than taking the train just about everywhere, because that really is the easiest way to get around Denmark, as I've stated. A bunch of stuff around Copenhagen I can talk about later. The next train place I went was the Jarnvargens Museum in Angelholm. I'm not quite sure what that translates to, but presumably something railway related. It's a pretty small railway museum. It's about 2 hours by train away from Copenhagen in Sweden, which was nice because it meant I could say I'd been to Sweden now. I'll probably go back. It's not a very big museum. A couple hours and you see everything. Only a couple engines, pieces of equipment. Most of the focus is on the more technical aspect of railways, or at least that's how it felt. Which makes sense, because there's a big railway training center, like, right next to the museum. Which, again, is pretty much right next to a train station, so it's easy to get to. Little trickier this time because of construction. After I was at that museum, I did go to a couple other places. I took the ferry over to Helsingør and went to Kronborg Castle, which, if you are not a theater fan, that's the castle where Hamlet takes place. And a couple other things. On the Wednesday, I went to the Danmarks Jernbane Museum, Danish Railway Museum. This one is once again right next to a major train station. It's right next to the major train station in Odense, which you might call Odense if you don't know, but it's Odense as the local pronunciation, at least as best as I could tell. Big museum. It's in a former roundhouse. They occupy all 21 stalls. They've got some extra tracks on the side. Lots of stuff to see there. A couple of fun special exhibits too. Once again, took some video. Might do a video on it, might not, I don't know. Also checked out the H.C. Andersen Museum. Hans Christian Andersen being an author who wrote a lot of tales that you've probably heard of. The big one being The Little Mermaid. But if you've also heard of, say, The Ugly Duckling, The Little Match Girl, Thumbelina, The Snow Queen, The Emperor's New Clothes, that's all H.C. Andersen as well. The following day that was on the Thursday, was probably my second favorite part of the trip. And like I said, the Hedelands Railway was fun, so you know that this has to be pretty close. I took the train to Hamburg in Germany, and I went to Miniature Wonderland, which is the world's largest model railroad. You know, not counting Train Mountain, because that's not quite the same thing. Where's the split? There's the split. Now, it was almost 4 hours to get from Weil, which is where I was staying at for that night, down to Hamburg, and then another 4 hours back. And their trains go pretty fast, so that tells you it is actually quite the distance. But, I mean, I spent about 5 hours in Miniature Wonderland. It is very much worth it. I would highly recommend. You are going to get a video of some of the stuff I saw at Miniature Wonderland. The following day was, I'm gonna say, the only day that had no trains involved whatsoever. I know, it's probably sounding kind of weird. But yeah, there were no trains involved on that Friday. I walked a bit around Weil, and then I went to Billund. And as if that name sounds familiar, Billund is home to what is probably the world's most famous and beloved and purchased toy, the Lego brick. Lego was founded in Billund. That's where they started off making primarily wooden toys like the duck, but also wooden train toys. Saw a few of those. And then one day after World War II, they bought a plastic extrusion machine, started making plastic toys, and then had the idea to make these little interlocking bricks. And the rest is history. Spent a bunch of time there. Rented a car after that so I could get to a few other places. Because the next day was the last place that was train specific. So we had the Tram Museum, we had the Hedelands Railway, we had the Railway Museum in Angelholm, we had the Danish Railway Museum. We had Miniature Wonderland. The last spot was the Brerup Railway. And I'm not entirely sure I'm pronouncing that town right, but it's really hard to pronounce, so I'm going with Brerup. It's a pretty short railway. It's about 5 kilometers, so roughly 3 miles. They were running a rail bus that day. Unfortunately, I missed the steam engine by a weekend, but I planned this trip 5 months ago. There's only really so much you can do. Alright, back into this guy. But it was a fun ride. I did it twice. They've got a restaurant at the old station in Brad's. Food was really good. Really good. A little spendy, but it was good. Would recommend it. And of course, I got video there, so you will get a video on that. So that's pretty much all the train stuff I did, besides riding trains around the country to get to other places. But I did do a lot of other non-train things. The big one is what they call Tivoli Gardens. It is a public garden slash amusement park in downtown Copenhagen. It's right next to the main train station. Oh hey, actually you need to go get these cars first. So Tivoli Gardens, a lot of fun. The pantomime shows were... those were a lot of fun. It's basically a little theater dance show, but with very little spoken dialogue, if any. Which is nice, because it means that pretty much anyone's going to be able to understand what they're doing. You might, if they have to speak, you wouldn't understand it. But if all you're doing is watching, anyone can understand that. They also have a roller coaster from the early 1900s that is braked by hand. There's a guy on the roller coaster train with a brake lever, and he is the one who keeps it under control. Which, that's pretty rare these days. I made sure I didn't go on any other rides, but I went on that one. Let's see, I also visited a planetarium, which was kind of fun, and then did like 9 different things, 8 or 9 different things on the Monday. Started off with a church that has a spiral tower on the spire. It was a climb, but it was worth it. After that, did a canal tour, a good way to get an overview of the city. Walked through the Karlsborg Palace and the Amalienborg Palace, and saw the changing of the guard there. And, I mean, those guards, they look like they might have funny uniforms, but they got real weapons. I have no doubt they are fully trained guards. And then, of course, went up and saw the most famous statue in all of Denmark, Den Lille Havfru, the Little Mermaid. And it is, in fact, a little statue. It's only about maybe 4 feet tall. Coming up pretty hot. Oh, you got a hot... someone's got a hot box. You got a hot box. Which car is hot boxed? Which car did I not? Oh, you're not going very far at least. Yeah, that's gonna be annoying to fix. Well, I guess that means we had better check all these cars before we leave. the Milanborg Palace. So yeah, went and saw Dindili Hafru. Got some stuff at the ice cream stand nearby. Yum 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 yum. Walked through an old castle, Starfort, and then went to the City Museum, which wasn't that exciting. And then to the National Museum, which was very exciting and which I did not have near enough time to spend at. And then because I had some time, I went to the Guinness World Record Museum. Which I wouldn't have normally done. But it was alright. Alright, now you can get going. Just clear to there. Nope, 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 nope. Wrong train. Wrong train. And then, as mentioned, I also went to a couple other places around Copenhagen. Up in Helsingør, I went to Kronborg Castle, Hamlet's Castle, and I went to the Maritime Museum, which is built into an old dry dock next door. And it was both of those were good places to go. Kronborg didn't talk a whole lot about Hamlet, but you could tell the history was there. And also, big ballroom. Very big ballroom. I mentioned the H.C. Andersen Museum, I mentioned Miniature Wonderland. On the way to Breerup, I went to Jelling, where they have some old rune stones. And by old, I mean more than 1,000 years old. Not really a record, but it's some of the oldest things you'll find in Denmark. The Jelling stones are actually, I guess, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then because I had time after Breerup before I had to take the car back, I went and found the highest point in Denmark, Mullehøj. All 560 feet of it. Denmark doesn't really have mountains. But on the other hand, the next day I went to Himmelbjerg. This was the last full day before I flew home. Himmelbjerg is only like the 7th or 8th tallest point in Denmark, but it looks like it would be the highest. It towers over the landscape. Whereas Mullehøj and the other nearby hills are... I mean, you can tell they're tall, but there's a lot of other hills around, so it's kind of hard to tell just high above sea level you are. Himmelbjerg, you can tell you are up, especially when you go to the tower. But really, Himmelbjerg was just like half the fun, because I also went to, in order to get there, you take a boat. And I made sure that on the way back, I took what is the oldest coal-fired paddle boat in the world, the Helen? Something like that. Translates to Golden Plover, built in 1861. I've ridden on some old trains. I've ridden behind some old trains. But I think the oldest train I've ridden behind is still only from 1875. You don't find a whole lot older than 1861 out there. So, there's your challenge, Hyce. Go find something older than that. It was fun. And then last stop, I went to the museum in Silkeborg. Found the Tolland Man. A man who was apparently died somehow involving hanging, we're not exactly sure why, in 400 BC. His body was then buried in a bog and recovered in the 1900s surprisingly intact. Like, so intact that not only were they able to preserve his head, but they were able to look at the contents of his stomach and determine his last meal, and roughly how long he ate it, or how much time passed between him eating it and him dying. That's incredible. Now, one thing I mentioned is, at the Tram Museum I mentioned that pretty much all the displays are only in Danish. That's not really the rule. I noticed that most of the other places I went, there was at least a Danish and an English description. And sometimes there'd also be like a German or a French or some other languages. Nonetheless, like I said, Google Translate app, really helpful for being able to tell just what the heck you're looking at. A few other things I noticed, not really any drinking fountains anywhere that I saw. Maybe I wasn't looking in the right places, but not really any drinking fountains and not really any of those water bottle fill points. So I made sure I packed a couple water bottles around with me. And that's more or less the summary. There's always probably a little more I could talk about, but I'm finding it surprisingly hard to talk about my fun trip when I'm playing a game. So we'll just focus on the game for now. It is, of course, yet another day on the Andrews and Eastern. So, anyway, I will digress one moment to say that you can expect a bunch of content to come out of this trip. Hopefully by this weekend I'll have put out one that's literally just a short compilation of like little 5 or so second clips of every single train I rode in Denmark. Maybe minus 1 or 2, because some of those metros I rode a bunch. I'm also planning a video on the Tram Museum, a video on the Hedelands Railway, possibly videos on the museums in Angelholm and Odense, video on Miniature Wonderland, video of Beer at Brad's, 1, maybe 2 videos on the Helen and the other boats, and then probably just a couple videos of just watching trains come in and out of the stations in Copenhagen and Odense. Because there's a lot of them, I'd swear. Every minute there's a train entering or departing Copenhagen Central Station. It's nuts. Anyway, this stream might not go too long. Don't know why I'm not really feeling the stream tonight. Might just be tired. Copenhagen is 9 hours ahead. I came back on Monday, and while I didn't feel the jet lag then, I'm kinda starting to catch it. But, you know, we can keep going for a while. So those are all for POs. This is all for PW1. Don't do that. Nothing for you to pick up at the moment. Let's come back for a car later. Okay. Now let's get the main line cleared. You can always go back and run around that car later. Oh, something else I should mention about visiting Denmark. The majority of the people there know English. I did use some Danish. There were a couple places where I had to use Danish. But for the most part, English was sufficient. Weirdly enough, when I went to Miniature Wonderland, the default assumption was that I knew German. Even at, like, in Denmark, I go somewhere, I open my mouth, and they immediately change to English. But Germany, that was not the case. And it caught me off guard a little bit. Once I said I only know English, then they were able to help me, but yeah. Bit of a fun difference there. Anyway, so that's that trip recap. I hope we all are having a good night tonight. Like I said, I'm feeling a little off. Might just be the fact that I'm still pining for the... Denmark doesn't really have fjords, but... Might still be missing the country, but because it was fun. Would highly recommend going to visit Denmark. And if you do go to Copenhagen, I have another travel tip for you. Gonna knock the music back again for a moment. Copenhagen has something called a Copenhagen card. What it is, it's actually not a physical card, it's something on your phone. But you buy it, you put it on your phone, and for whatever time length is on there, you get free entry into like 80 different museums and free public transportation. That's huge. I bought a 5-day card, and according to the website, that 5-day card for all the places I went saved me about $90 on entrance fees. I don't know how much it saved me on transportation, but it saved me a ton just on the entrance fees. And honestly, the convenience of just pull out your phone and scan the thing, even if it hadn't actually saved me money, I think I would recommend it. But yeah, if you plan to go to a whole bunch of places, and not just in Copenhagen, but up to Helsingør, over to Roskilde, out to Hillerød, Koo. If you're going to Copenhagen, get the card. I don't think you're gonna regret it. It is just so good. We'll pull those there. I managed to hotbox that car, so... And I think our pulpit train needs some adjusting. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay. Well, we'll just, do that. You still got, you're pretty good on coal and water. I think I'll be able to make it back once everything's ready. No, not that engine. I want that engine. Alright, now go get the rest of your train and you can proceed onward. Get some of these bearings. I took way too many pictures during that trip. Just way too many pictures. Who knows, maybe I'll just use all those and make a video too. Let's see. Just keep those down here for a sec. And then you're gonna have to figure out what to do with the stuff up there. So you can go to Nantahala. And we've got 2 cars to pick up there, and I think just the 1 to drop off. And then we gotta make those swaps too, of course. Back to give this train some attention. We'll just break that there. Up here we've got at least, yeah, that car is going to be ready to go. So there will be some reverse switching up there. And then there's going to be, yep. So the mine turn will have some cars. There'll be some cars there. All those cars are ready to go. Some of those cars are ready to go. It's nice that we got the Yards and Bryson ready. Did we ever assign these cars anywhere to go? I don't think we did. Well, not that I care that much, but I guess we'll tell the switcher here to go get those cars. Bring them back down. Or skook them. I know I talk about how we never ought to run this thing on AI, and then we always do. Not too worried about sending stuff downhill, though. Alright, now you can go pick up the loads on this end. I'll need to shift that car over there. Wow, that's a lot of bears. Deal with this engine for a bit. The car on the back of the train, of course. Yeah, remember what the most efficient way to switch this thing is. Okay, so now... That's almost done. Now I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this car. No, you weren't supposed to be applied. And then we come tell this engine what to do for a moment. Back to this one. We'll just do the switch manually for a moment. Gonna do some kicking. I'm not gonna get these ones though. Oh, nah. That was not supposed to happen. Maybe I should have just kicked them. There we go. I'm just gonna waypoint you to Brooks for now. Actually, I don't need to worry about 105 for a bit, so we will make that the last priority. What are you doing? Hmm. 65 really wants to be the engine that runs places, doesn't it? I think I'll just might just have 55 weight there for a moment. Nah, I think we can get 55 switched. Little more. Oh, that's too much. There's one other thing I can do real quick. Pay back some debt. We did have to take out a bunch more loan to pay for all the repair parts cars we sent out, which is annoying, but that's the cost of trying to keep your railroad intact. I think we can get these two cars in before we have to dive in the hole for the freight. There we go. maybe I can get myself pulled out in a way? Yeah, I think so. It's gotta be really quick. Perfection. Well, you know what? I think we're actually just going to call the stream here. Like I said, I'm not really feeling the stream tonight for some reason, but thank everyone who turned in. Be sure to go catch the VOD if you didn't catch any of my Denmark trip recap. The Ben Denmark trip, as I call it. But we will try and be back next week, and hopefully things will be a little more exciting. So until that point, have a good night, y'all. Take care.